Hi, and welcome to the nuts and bolts of diploma pathways. So this is a totally new presentation. Usually between being a former special educator, a parent trainer, and a parent that has gone through this stuff, I'm able to be a lot more conversational in these presentations and give a lot of personal examples, both from professional instances and from, with me and my girls. But this is a brand new presentation that is based on the new legislation that has come out, and it's new for everybody. So we're learning it and we're here to help you learn it. So basically, what is happening now is that in Florida, there is only one diploma option, and it is a standard diploma. But now there are multiple pathways to get there. So we're going to talk about that because it's been progressively changing since the mid 2010s, and it's a continually evolving thing, and we want you to know all of the options. So welcome. My name is Sassafrass Moore, and I am a parent trainer here at FND. I am really glad that you're here. And like I said before, I am a former educator. I am a parent with 2 special needs children of my own, and glad that I can be here to help you find your way through. So let's begin. One last thing about FND is we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We get our funding from the Federal Department of Education through a grant with the Office of Special Education Programs. We are completely free. All of our services are funded by our grants. There's never a charge for parents. We are the official parent training and information center for the state of Florida. So the law that governs the Disability Act, IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is part of what funds us so that we can help educate and guide you guys through these paths, especially as this new legislation comes out and they make changes. We're here to help you keep abreast of everything. However, I have to let you know that we are really awesome. We are a grassroots organization. We were founded in 1985 by a group of parents that had kids with disabilities, just like us, and they came together for resources and information. And we are family-centered and family-driven. We are here to help. Again, all of our services are absolutely free. And when you talk to someone at FND, what's really, really great is that all of us parent trainers, all of our management staff, all the way up to the board, we all have walked through your shoes. We all have a child who has disabilities. And so we can, there's slightly different paths, but we can all relate to one another. And the last thing I would like to say about FND is that we do not act as attorneys or doctors. Nothing we say can be confused as being medical or legal advice. We're here to gather information, resources, and supports from the newest sources, from the Bureau of Exceptional Student Services, from the Federal Department of Education, from the Florida Department of Education, from the federal statutes and such. And we are happy to help you at any part of the ESC process. So with that, let's get started to our topic. So this is just a little bit of an outline on what we're going to be covering. So we're going to review the legislation in IDEA, which is, again, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the federal act that covers all of our kiddos and gives them funding and monitors the IEP process. So we're also going to be talking about secondary transition and transitional IEPs, some of the federal and the state mandates, accommodations and modifications, and some of the difference and why it matters. We're going to be talking about the age of majority and briefly affecting how it could impact your student as they're getting to transition age and doing those transitional IEPs when they've reached the age of majority. We're going to talk about the elimination of the special education diploma, which was eliminated back in 2014. And we're going to talk about some of the new and different pathways that there are open to students with disabilities. So now there's one standard diploma, but there is a lot of different ways to get there. So we're going to talk about the CTE graduation pathway. This is the newest pathway that was just created, and it's pretty awesome. And we're going to talk about diploma designations and also deferral of graduation. So that's, if your child is 18 and you want them to continue getting services, that is what we're talking about when we say deferral. So the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act the purpose is to ensure that all children and disabilities have a free and appropriate public education with services and a plan, the individual education plan, to meet all of their unique needs, and to prepare them for further education, employment, and a functional and happy independent life after. So we know that the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act covers kids from 0 to age 22. So we have the early education section, we have from 3 to 22 within the school system, and then they're no longer covered by IDEA. However, then the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, they're also now coming under that fold and that protection. And that's going to go in anywhere that has federal funding, in public places, in employment. And so under the ADA, it's a little different. The person with the disability is responsible to self-disclose their disability to any post-secondary schools or programs that they're going into, or to employment. It's their responsibility to provide any documentation or proof of disability that is needed, especially at the post-secondary level. So they'll want to see your IEPs, maybe some evaluations, and then they will have those supports for you. And it's also your responsibility to ask for accommodations that you might need. And so that's part of why we're going to talk about accommodations and modifications, and how they're helping our kiddos and how we need to help them find their voice to keep that going once they're no longer in the school setting or the K through 12 school setting. So there's a secondary TIEP. It's the Transitional IEP, and it's for transition services. And Section 300.29 of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, it provides for a coordinated set of activities for students with disabilities that is designed for outcome-oriented processes that promote from school to the post-secondary, either as employment, vocational training, integrative employment, a continuing adult basic education, learning adult skills, those daily ADLs, those adult daily living skills, independent living, or community participation. So when we're talking about the TIEP, it's just an IEP, but at that point we're bringing in those transitional services that are going to help them when they are either 18 or 22 and are out of the school system and out from under the protection of IDEA, so that hopefully they have a good path and they know what they're doing and they have made the goals and they're plugging along, and their high school experience and the diploma path will reflect that. So the Transition Individual Education Plan is basically, we just talked about that. It's going to start during the student's 7th grade year, or whenever the child attains the age of 12. Now that is new. That came out of the new legislation that the Florida Senate came up with this last session. Previously, we started doing transitional IEPs at the age of 14, but now we're looking at 7th grade or 12, whichever comes first. So that is where we're talking about identifying the needs for these transitional services, you know, what they're going to need going forward, what their post-secondary goals are, what their career goals are, if they're looking for employment, supported employment, whatever. This is where we're going to start specifically making goals in the IEP that reflect their age and the need to start looking onward, just like we do with our typical children. So as of July 1st, 2020, there was some changes. Basically, this is just a summary. It expands the duties of the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or VR, to describe the provision of pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities within a specific timeline, and to highlight a federal change in 2014 that provides specific pre-employment and transition services to students with disabilities. So these include, and these were for children 14 to 21, but now again, we're moving it from 12 to 21. So we're wanting to bring in vocational rehabilitation a little bit earlier. And if you're not familiar with this program, it is also through a division of the Florida Department of Education. And it is great. It provides training, it provides interest inventories, it can provide access to counseling to be able to work through some issues that might, anything that would help prepare the child to have either independent or supported employment. So they are absolutely free for their services, and it's a wonderful program if you're not familiar yet. They're going to be coming into those IEP meetings a little bit sooner than they were in the past now. And they are all focused again on those pre-employment transition services. So while this is playing, I'm going to have a big list of links in the comments. I want to let you know I am one of the first things I'm going to put in there is the new Florida statutes, so you can read about that if you're interested in what's changing. And then I will also put some information from the from the Florida Department of Education about some of those changes again. So we're going to take a second and we're going to talk about accommodations versus modifications. So accommodations adjust the way that you learn or that you respond to your environment. There's no change in the expectations. So we're not changing the lesson itself or necessarily how it's, well, we can or how it's presented, we can kind of play with. But the actual things we want the children to learn is the same exact thing that every other child at that same age level, grade level, should be working on and learning. So when we're accommodating things, we're kind of just changing the environment or the way that they're learning. So this means that we could be giving them instead of just giving them an auditory presentation, we could maybe be giving them the same lesson on a computer. We could do it through a digital book. We could do it through visual presentations. Perhaps it's a matter of a child has sensory needs and we can let them work in a quieter, darker place, or perhaps a child that has ADHD who, again, we don't want to change the actual lesson and what the child is expected to learn. We're just going to change the environment a little, and we're going to, put him up in the front row so he's a little less distracted. So the lesson doesn't change. What we're trying to teach doesn't change. However, we're just changing the environment so that it's more suitable, or it's more suitable towards their learning style. Now, when we're talking about modifications, that's a little bit different because we're actually modifying the lesson itself. So we're changing what the actual expectation is. And this is permitted for students that have significant cognitive disabilities. You might have heard of access points, and that's pretty much what we're talking about here, is where you're still learning the same content as the children who do not have the modifications, but maybe we're talking about less breadth and less depth. So we're kind of touching, and we're just, because it takes so much to learn, we want to make sure that you just have that foundational information instead of all of the in-depth stuff that we're doing in the normal Sunshine State standards. So modifications and accommodations, they're a little interesting because accommodations and modifications are both allowed under IDEA and under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or Section 504. However, again, the modifications are only for students that have a significant cognitive impact. If there's no reason for the child to be learning a little bit less, if they're able to learn the whole thing, then that's what we want them to be doing. Okay, so moving on to the age of majority. So before we talk about the different diploma options, I want to make sure that you parents are informed of that in the school year that your student turns 17, the school must notify both of you of the transfer of rights when that child turns 18. And the year that the student turns 18, the school is required to send you a separate and distinct notice of the transfer of rights. So on the 18th birthday, all of a sudden, unless you have considered guardianship, whether it's a full guardianship or it's a partial guardianship, basically, instead of you getting the IEP invites, your student will be getting them because they have reached the age of majority. And unless you have moved to do something different, now they're a legal adult regardless of their capacity. So if that's something you need to look into, I would encourage you to look into it in advance. ARC is a really good resource for that if you need a place to get started. But definitely you want to get started with that before their 18th birthday, because it's a process, it's a legal process, and it takes a little while. So that's, again, something you want to start thinking about at 17, if your child will need that, because at that point, at the age of majority, they will be the person who has the rights to the IEP, to everything. I mean, they will be a legal adult. So, and again, it doesn't matter if there's a disability. It doesn't even matter if it's a cognitive disability. You have to take action if you know that this child will continue to need your parental services at that same level that you're doing now. Think about it ahead of time. Start thinking about that at 16 and 17 and get that ball rolling. So, however, all decisions that are the adult age student, it's all changing. It's all going to go to that student. So they're the ones that's going to be signing it and making the IEP a legal binding document. In fact, you're not even going to get an invitation to the IEP anymore. The child, of course, has the right to invite you for support. And I would encourage that, of course. But as far as everybody concerned, legally, this is an adult, and we're asking the adult to come and attend the meeting and to participate in the meeting and to make decisions at that meeting. So, and again, too, I don't want to harp on that too long, but it's going to go across the board. Medical, I mean, if, the minute your child turns 18, if you're the one that has to take them to the doctor or the dentist and has to make the planning and has to, all that stuff, and that nothing has changed just because of their chronological age, you're going to need that guardianship. You could do a medical guardianship, you can do full guardianship, you could just do a financial guardianship, whatever it is, because literally it doesn't matter if your child has a disability. It doesn't matter how profoundly they're disabled. They turn 18, you can't make a dentist appointment for them. You can't make a doctor's appointment for them. You certainly can't authorize surgery or dental work or anything. And just to let you know from personal experience, when my daughter had to have her wisdom teeth pulled, we were in the process of guardianship, and he didn't feel comfortable using her consent as a legal adult, because there's ramifications of, how much can she really be consenting? And then I couldn't consent for her because she was a legal adult. So don't find yourself in this situation. Across the board, legally, when your child reaches the age of majority, they're an adult. So please, 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 I implore you to look into guardian options if you need that, and also to make sure that you have signed up with the Florida Medicaid waiver through the Agency for Persons with Disabilities if they're going to need continued services and supports like that. So anyway, sorry to derail this. It's already a pretty long presentation, so let's keep on trucking. Now, again, another Florida Wings is a program. They have some of the law that's regarding guardianship and all that. And again, that will be posted in the comments. So if you want some more information on that, I also included a link to Disability Rights Florida, which is another amazing organization. And they are very good at supported decision making. So if you're looking for some information on that as your child is getting closer to these transitional IEPs, please check out that link. It'll be disabilityrightsflorida.org/disability. And then there's another, I Decide is another one, and I will also put the link to that in the chat. So it's a lot. It's going to be up there for a while. You take your time, figure it out, go through the links one at a time, whatever you have to do. It's going to be there on Facebook. So, just absorb this as you can. So the standard diploma, well, back in 2014, we eliminated the special diploma. And so now all students are working towards that standard diploma. And so there is an addition now of 2 standard diplomas that are only available to students that have disabilities and have an IEP. And so we're going to talk about them. Again, 1 diploma now, it's a standard diploma, but again, we have lots of different pathways to it. And all along the way, that's going to be defined by your transitional IEP and what it is that your student is looking to do post-secondary. And again, if you're interested in the Senate, the laws and the statutes on that, I also have I have a link to that in the chat. I will also have some information on that, on the standard diplomas from the Florida Department of Education that you can look at if you want to further pursue that. So, what are the different diploma pathways? We're going to cover the 24 credit standard diploma, the 18 credit pathway standard diploma, the differences between the two. We're going to discuss the CTE, or the career and technical education pathway towards the standard diploma. That's the brand new one, and it's a pretty good one. So I can't wait to get into that with you. And then there's a couple of other pathways that are only available to students with disabilities. Now they don't often, or sorry, they're not only offered, they are offered to people with disabilities as well as typical students. I am so sorry, excuse me. But often they're not chosen just because typically our students with disabilities are struggling. And so we're looking at it through that lens. But that's not to say that these are unavailable to our students that have disabilities and have an IEP. So I'm just going to touch on those. The International Baccalaureate Pathway and the ACE, the Advanced International Certificate of Education. And so I'm also going to have another, this is a visual, it's going to be a link in the chat, but I think the visual things, at least they help me. They definitely, I think, help a lot of people with disabilities, especially our kiddos on the spectrum. But yeah, I love the visuals. So if you're a visual person, it's from Project 10, and they are an absolutely great resource. 10 is an acronym for the Transition Education Network, and they work hand in hand with the Florida Department of Education. So this is it's a pathways chart that you can kind of follow and see the different options. So don't think you have to remember everything that I'm saying today, because it's going to be a lot of stuff. And the links, again, you can rewatch the presentation. You can go through the links as you need. And it's a really great visual for you to get an idea of the different options. And also, the Florida Department of Education makes an annual academic advisement flyer, and I will put a link to that as well. And this document has a lot of information about post-secondary options, waivers, designations, state universities, just a lot of good post-secondary information. So, as previously mentioned, in 2014, there were some major pathways. It established 2 additional pathways that are only available to students with disabilities. And this is the academic and employment and the access. So if you are not a student with a disability and you don't have an IEP, you can't choose either of these. And so academic and employment pathway standard diploma. So in that, we're going to still do the academics. They are still learning core academics. But if a student has a job outside of the school, they can earn credits for that as a required elective. And if you think about it, in the past, there was a program, DCT. I don't know if anybody availed themselves of it in high school. I had a part-time job at Subway. I got credits for, but this is just going to be a little bit more intensive, because if you're deciding to go into that pathway education, post-secondarily, we want to help get you ready for those technical skills and that career. So it's going to be like that old school DCT that we did or didn't do, as the case may be, but it's going to be a little more intensive, because we want to get our students with disabilities ready to enter the workforce. So the second one is called access, and this is the one that's only for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And this is where they're using the access points, and I kind of talked about that a little bit. It's where we're deviating a little bit. They're taking the same courses that were used to go to the special education diploma, but now it leads to a standard education diploma. And the only difference is, again, is that you're using the access points. So you are still responsible for learning the same information that your non-disabled peers are. It's just a difference of that breadth and depth. We're touching on things. We want to make sure that you have this basic education, and we're not going to get mired down into, some of the specifics that we have in the general ed curriculum. We want to be making sure that you're just understanding. So, and we're all, I think, if you have a child with a cognitive disability or an intellectual disability, you are familiar with access points. Nothing about that has changed, except that now it leads to a standard diploma, which is kind of nice if your student is wanting to go on post-secondary, to a college or a tech program. Instead of having that special diploma, they will have a standard diploma. So that is a benefit of the change that occurred in 2014. So both of these pathways allow students to use a career and technical education course. That's the CTE we were mentioning. And it has related content to the core academic courses, but it's a course substitute. So you can shade in 1 credit for each of the 4 core areas. So what do I mean by related content? Well, it means that we're looking at the core academic standards, and we're trying to correlate and see if there's any alignment between the CTE classes and the core academic class. With the legislation that occurred in 2014, they created this specific pathway. So The legislation didn't say that a certain alignment percentage had to be met, just as long as that it aligned 1% or higher to a core academic class. Then they can use that CTE class and substitute it for the core academic class. So the idea is that they're going to be learning some of the things that they might have been learning in the classroom, but they're using it towards, you know, the CTE. It's something that they're going to be doing post-secondarily. There are some core academics, of course, that cannot be substituted. We cannot substitute English 1, 2, 3, Algebra 1, or geometry, but we can substitute Algebra 2, you know, for our kids that really struggled in Algebra 1, you know, maybe, you know, they could do one of the CTE classes. English 4, you can substitute for a CTE class. So if you're thinking about, like, you know, like the math progression, you know, you have to take Algebra 1 and geometry, and then they most likely take a liberal math class. But after that, you're looking at that Algebra 2, and so it can be really intensive to go to those higher level maths. And so now we're not requiring our kiddos to do that. We can say that you can take this CTE class and you are learning job specific skills that also address some of the core academics that we would want you to be learning if you were in the traditional class. So in science, you can't substitute biology 1, but you can substitute any other science credit. You can't substitute US history, but you can substitute any of the other ones. So students can do CTE courses, substitutions, and receive accommodations just as they would their normal classes. And if you are under the Access Pathway Standard Diploma, you can receive modifications in the CTE classes. So again, you have to have a cognitive disability to have the modifications. Just know that if you're taking the CTE classes and it's leading to a program that's going to have an industry certification exam, that the one snag with this is that they can't have any modifications on the industry certification exam. There used to be a provision for that in the past, but as that's the, you know, it's a certification for an employment in a field, that cannot be modified. So, you know, but everything up until that point, if they're under access points, can be. So both of these pathways can be accomplished by the 18 credit or the 24 credit pathway. The 18 credit pathway is not recommended for students on Access Pathway Standard Diploma because they need the most support. So giving them 24 credits to do it over, we're not rushing them through. However, there's a snag with that, but only if you're transferring from another state. You probably wouldn't be able to achieve the 24 credits before they age out at 22. So then in that case, you might want to use the 18 credit pathway to ensure graduation. But if you're a native Floridian, then that 24 credit pathway that you can do either the academic and employment or the access, you know, it just gives them that extra time, and they can stay in there until 22 and have more opportunities for education and experience in the employment realm. So what we have known as the traditional diploma for non-ESE students is a 24 credit standard diploma pathway. So we're talking about 4 credit English language arts, 4 credits of math, 3 credits of science, 3 credits of social studies, 1 credit for performing art or speech, debate, or practical art, or and 1 credit for physical education, and 8 elective credits, including 1 online course. So that is your typical standard 24 credit diploma pathway. So you have to have a minimum of a 2.0 grade point average to pass the statewide graduation assessments. And that's going to be Algebra 1 at the end of the course exam, and the 10th grade administration of the Florida Standards Assessments for Reading. But if a student that has a disability does not pass either of those statewide graduation assessments, they can also meet the requirements through a concordance score on a comparable assessment, an ACT or a SAT. And they can also have a results waiver from the IEP team that will help them to earn their diploma. So we talked about this stuff already. Again, the 24 credit standard academic and employment requirements. It is only for students who have disabilities and have an IEP. It is not for students that have a 504 plan under ADA. It is only for students that have an IEP. So they can earn 1 credit in each of the 4 core areas that are aligned with the CTE classes. So this is the only pathway that has a required half credit of paid employment based on at least 1 semester of paid employment. And that just has to be done at some point in their high school career. Specific documentation requirements are required. This will be what's called an employment transition plan. It has to be completed by the IEP team. And I will have a link to that in the chat. It will be from the Florida Department of Education, and it'll just say employment plan instructions PDF, so that you can familiarize yourself before you see it in the meeting. And I will also be giving a link to, again, the employment transition plan, but it's under the Florida Department of Education's secondary transition webpage. So you'll have a couple of different things to look at so that you can really get a feel for what that CTE plan looks like, or access points, or the academic and employment path. You'll be able to actually see those. So don't worry, you don't have to remember all this stuff again. Just, let it, come in through osmosis, and then later when you're up to it, you can kind of go back and look up all these resources. So again, this is the description of access course diplomas. We kind of talked about this. Again, it's only for students that have significant intellectual or cognitive disabilities, the ones that are taking the Florida Standards Alternate Assessment Test. It must have written parental consent, but it has the same core requirements and credit and elective requirements, but it utilizes those access points. So, and again, if you are doing the CTE classes, you can also use those access points. If you are using those in your regular core classes, you can use those in your, your vocational classes that you're using to prepare for post-secondary. So the students can utilize those CTE course substitutions. Again, it's, that higher English, that higher math. We're basically taking the highest levels and allowing you to transition into the workforce, or into classes that would support transition into the workforce. Again, you have to have a minimum of 2.0 grade point average and pass the statewide graduation assessments, the Algebra 1 test, the Florida State's alternative assessments, and reading. And this can be done with the 18 of the 24 credit pathway. But again, we really would recommend the 24 path, because it just gives them more time. And, I just never feel like there's any reason to rush our disabled students out into the world. give them that little bit of extra time if they need it. So uh, again, in the links, I will put the link to, it's called CPALMS, and that's where the state of Florida lists all of their normal standards. So you can get an idea of what the gen ed kids are, what the gen ed kids are learning. And then you can also look at access points too, and kind of, compare and contrast. So that will be available on the chat for you to look at as well. So again, the access points, the courses are based on a modified or curriculum or differentiated instruction. That's where we're actually changing the lesson and not how it's presented. And it's going to focus on the most critical content of the Florida standards. Again, we're removing that depth and the breadth. We're looking at the things that, what do we really want our kids to know out of high school? So these can be taught in both the general ed setting or in a separate classroom setting. Inclusion in the general education setting should always be considered as the first placement due to least restrictive environment. We always want to make sure that kids are spending as much time with their non-disabled typical peers as possible. And again, if they do not pass that FSAA, the Florida State Alternative Assessment, or the Algebra 1 EOC, again, you can be considered for a results waiver that would allow them to continue and graduate. So advantages versus disadvantages for the standard diploma versus access points. Well, the advantages is that you continue to be grade level curriculum, but it's based on the student's ability. The disadvantage is that it may change the amount of information acquired by the student. That's why we want to be really careful when we put kids on access points, because if you're able to get the whole content, we want you to get that. But access points are just created for those guys that it's just too much. And so we have to pick and choose what we actually want to disseminate to these kids so that they can transition into the next phase of their lives. Another advantage is that what's really great about this is they can finally check, yes, they graduated with a diploma. Prior to 2014 with a special diploma, that was not a regular diploma. So now everybody, it's basically a participation, award, but now everybody is getting that standard diploma. One of the disadvantages is that the CPE classes, you can modify the curriculum. However, again, we mentioned that they are going to have to take that assessment for the industry, and that cannot be modified. You have to show comprehension at the time that you want to get licensure. And hopefully your student will actually have that. We're going to modify the lessons, and so we're just changing it a little, but we're also keeping in mind that the kids do need to pass that later on. Another advantage is that you're eligible to attend Florida post-secondary transition programs at colleges and universities. Before 2014, again, when we had the special diploma, that did not translate very well into the post-secondary collegiate system, because basically you just got it, and it's no reflection of your actual gaining of information or not. And so the new way here is that we really are trying to keep up the expectations and the demands, even of our kids on access points, so that when they get that standard diploma, it actually means that they were educated, even if we modified the curriculum slightly for them. Another disadvantage is that, sometimes a state university can see that you did graduate with a standard diploma, but that you had a waiver or an exemption. In that case, or if you are not able to pass the entrance exam at the collegiate level, they might ask your student to do some additional remedial coursework, and that's okay too. In the state of Florida, we're really lucky. There's actually 22. We are number one in the country for the most post-secondary options for our transitioning students with disabilities. So we have 22 programs that are set up and modified and have supports and knowledge that we need to be supporting this community. So that is something that's pretty cool, is that now you can take the standard diploma, and even if you have to take a couple of prerequisite classes, there are literally 22 programs that want to bring you in and support you and understand where you are with your disability. And the last advantage is, well, we kind of already said that, didn't we? You can enroll in a state college or a technical school, and while if you're not doing so great with the entrance exam part, they may want that remedial work. They'll still take it. So that's the really important thing, and that's a pretty great one. All right, moving right along. I know this is a lot of information, so thanks for bearing with me, but it's important to know these things as they come out. It's a constantly evolving field due to changes at the federal level, at the state level. So we just want to keep you informed of what's happening. So where to find the access points information and how to use them? They can be found at the CPOMS website that I put in a link to in the chat. So you can look at that, and again, you can kind of compare and contrast, what is the standard for the typical child, and then what is the access points. And you'll see that they do align up. I mean, it's going to be the same topics, but maybe it could be even that it's a lower taxonomy in the educational, realm. When we're talking about how we teach children, we have rote information where they're just repeating it. We have it where they're synthesizing it, where they're saying it in their own words, where all of this stuff. So, maybe we're even changing on like how we look at how they're responding to it. We're looking for a more basic comprehension and knowledge, but it's still on that grade level content and that information that we want our typical kids to know. So you don't want to deviate too far. We just want to make sure that they get those big concepts and that it's not overwhelming. You can create positive discussions with your IEP team and develop successful strategies for planning your graduation and post-secondary endeavors. Definitely in the state of Florida, we're moving to 12, including your child in those transitional IEP meetings. You can have an assessment planning resource guide for IEP teams to determine if the FSAA is the appropriate test for the student. Again, if they're having a trouble even with the Florida standard alternative assessment, there are options. There's the waiver, but there are other options as far as maybe there is a more appropriate test that your district would be willing to administer and would be in compliant with state requirements. So that is always something to think about. And just want to let you know that this, with the access points, we're focusing on the abilities, make sure that they are self-advocating, that they know how to accommodate for themselves, they know how to modify, they know how to say what accommodations help them, that they know to ask for help if they need it. Make sure that you're aware that, to be able to use these access points with your child, this requires explicit prior written notice or parental consent. And I have attached a link to that from the Florida Department of Education also in the chat. Anytime they're changing your placement, your child's placement, services, or certainly whether they're changing from standard, the standard to the access points, any of these changes or proposal of changes even requires your parental consent. So that's good to know. And again, I've provided a link in the chat for that. So this is the 18 credit graduation pathway. And again, this is not something we see a lot of ESE students utilizing, particularly ones with IEPs, because it's the shorter path. You have your 4 Englishes, your 4 maths, your 3 sciences, your 3 social studies, 3 electives instead of 8. And then you have fine arts, performing, speech, debate, practical. And this one, you don't have to do the online course and you don't have to do physical education. But if you're thinking about your student's day, they're losing a lot of electives. And so we're putting a lot more core academics on them. And that's just, it's not the best plan. We want it to be balanced, the core academics, with things that they can do that are fun, that are going to help them engage socially and learn new arts, and also have that time to have PE and run around and all of that. Generally this is not a path that's followed by our ESE kids, because it does have more academics and it has less of the fun classes that help balance it out and make the day a little easier. So again, it's pretty much all the same after that. After the courses, they have to have a 2.0 on the 4.0 scale. And students with disabilities do have the option for the IEP to waive the statewide graduation assessment if they don't pass Algebra 1 or the 10th grade FSA reading assessment. And it can also, the 18 credit pathway can also be done in conjunction with the traditional standard diploma, the academic and employment competency standard diploma, and also the access points. Again, I would really, really recommend, especially for our students that have cognitive and intellectual issues, or even our SLD students with dyslexia and ADHD, let them break it up over those 24 credits so that they get to have an extra band, or they get to have an extra whatever that's fun, so that they're not overwhelmed. I just think that that's, something to think about. So, again, with the 18 credit standard diploma, the career and technical education, or CTE courses, they have to meet the 18 minimum credit pathway. They have to complete 2 credits in the career and technical education field, and they have to get the industry certification. That's a big and. Especially since, remember, we can modify the curriculum and the classes for the CTE courses, but we cannot modify the licensure exam, because that is not within the school system. That is actually the professional certification program. So that is something to be considered. You have to do that. You also have to complete 2 credits in a work-based learning courses, or 2 credits that are about financial literacy. And then with this one, you're not required, again, to take PE or the fine arts and performing arts. So, moving on. So, just a little bit more about the CTE option, the career and technical education option. So these are specialized courses within a specialized career path. So they used to have other names, trade classes, voc tech classes. Now many career clusters added beyond building construction trades. We have hospitality and office skills. And if you are interested in career clusters, again, in the chat, I have put a link to that to kind of like, you can look at that and see the different options, and you can talk to your child, do that interest inventory. You know, what do you want to do after this? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to get a job? Do you want to go to a tech program? What do you see yourself doing? And if they want to go into the employment field, you know, I would really encourage you. Vocational rehabilitation has these skill assessments and interest inventories. And so they can find out what your child is into. My daughter, you know, she really came to find out she really, really likes the idea of working with food. And so she was able to take a couple of classes and to do some volunteering in different places in the community and work in different restaurants and different kitchens to get an idea of if that's what she really, really, really wanted to do. So this is a really cost-effective way to start a career, because if you are going to that tech path, you're starting those classes towards that certification. And when you graduate, you're there, you're done. So you can earn your standard diploma and your industry certification simultaneously. So again, this is a very cost-effective way. And then once they graduate, they can really just hit the ground running. They've got everything that they need. So this also prepares for additional post-secondary education. And you can also participate in a wide range of programs that really provide a great living wage. So there's 17 career clusters geared towards middle school, high school, and district technical schools. So again, I have the Florida Department of Education. It is the CTE brochure, and that will tell you the different career clusters that you can look at and see, you know, what your student might be interested in, if any of those options. So check that link out. And again, another thing about that is it's a really great visual. So if you're a visual person, if your student is a visual person, you know, print that out and let them see all of the different options. So the courses can be modified. They can be on access points for this program, but again, the certified tests, they cannot be modified. So definitely something to think about. There's 3 common myths about the CTE program. And so we're going to talk about them, but we're only going to talk about 3. So one is that this is only for students who do not plan to go to a 4-year college. This is not true. This can also be a pathway to further post-secondary education. You can set the student up to continue towards certification or their associates or bachelor's or master's, whatever it is that they are looking to do. Another myth is that CTE training is for one job only. And the truth is you really get to explore multiple career options through this. And so you can kind of get a feel for different things before you're absolutely committed to one. So this is another advantage of this program. So another myth is that it doesn't build academic skills. And this is absolutely not true. There are still the core academic classes. Even if you're on access points, you are still learning the standard lessons that all of our other kiddos are due. You're just trading. There's only 4 classes that you're trading out for these CTE classes. And again, the CTE classes do also have that academic component where, again, you're learning something that is equivalent to what you might be learning if you were taking that English 4 or that, you know, advanced mathematics class. So you're not giving up on education if you choose this tech path. The truth is that you're doing both simultaneously. So this is kind of to show why CTE courses are important. So for some of our kids, this area might be their motivation for going to school. So if you're not doing so great in some of the academic classes, this could be a way to give your child that self-confidence that they're just going to be able to ride out into a career. And again, this is kind of what I was saying about the 18 versus the 24 credit pathway. Keep it fun. If they're taking the 24 credits, so they have electives, they're taking some of these CTE things, so they're getting to work with their hands, they're getting, out of that traditional classroom setting where it's just sitting there. It's a really great thing for some kids. These are the classes that they live for, because the academic ones are frustrating or hard, or, there's just a lot to go with that. So CTE participation, we know that it improves college and career readiness outcomes. We have students that have 3% fewer unexcused absences. They're 5% more likely to graduate high school on time, and they're 20% more likely to be employed after education and graduation, which is kind of significant. 20% more likely to be employed, because it is hard for our adults with disabilities to get out there and to get educated. And particularly for our students that are falling into that, 75 to 80 IQ range, you're not so disabled that you can't get a job and you can't participate, but it's really, really hard. Maybe college isn't an option, but this is. And this will allow you to have that path that you just glide into, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So I think this is a really, really good thing for our students here in Florida. So there are 3 additional graduation pathways that are available to all students, including students with disabilities. And there is the performance-based exit option, or the high school equivalency diploma. And that's where this was formerly known as the GED exit option. It's not a standard diploma. It's an equivalency diploma. So it is still the GED, but you're just taking those classes through the schools. And then there are 2 college high school diploma program pathways, the IB, the International Baccalaureate, and that's, where you're taking international examinations and you're getting college level classes in high school. This is, again, not something we see a lot of our students with IEPs doing, but it is not impossible, of course. And then the other one is Advanced International Certificate of Education, or the ACE diploma. And then again, this is pre-college international curriculum and an examination program. So again, these are not going to be very likely options for our guys, but those are also available to all students. So diploma designations. So these are not separate diplomas. They're just designations. So it's the path to get to the standard diploma. So you have the scholar designation. So basically, these are also signified on the diploma with an extra sticker or a ribbon that's denoting what the student earned. So IEP teams discuss both options with the student and the family, and document the decision whether they will pursue a designation at the time of the annual IEP meeting. So there's the scholar designation and the merit designation. And if you want more information on that, again, there will be a link with the Florida Department of Education's academic advisement flyer, and that will give you some more information on that. So moving on. So what does your district and county offer? Check your school's website, check the district's website to find out what available graduation pathways are supported by your particular districts. Again, these are all under the Florida umbrella from Florida statutes, but We all know that all districts kind of run a little bit differently. So check with your district, check with your school. You can talk to the school guidance counselor. You can talk to the your LEA, the district representative that goes to the IEP meetings would be happy to talk to you about this as well. Really the only options that are not going to be available is generally one school in the district at both the middle school and the high school level will be the IB or will be the ACE diploma program school. So it's really not even an issue if your district not having it, it's just which schools have what. So this one is about deferring the receipt of a standard diploma. So once a student with a disability takes physical possession of their standard high school diploma, they are no longer available or eligible, for a free and free and appropriate public education. So if you are thinking about deferring, your child is about to hit that age of majority, your child is hitting the 12th grade, and you want them to have that extra from 18 to 22, this is the deferral. So according to legislation that's passed in Florida in 2014, I'm just going to read this because it's just easier. A student must have an IEP that prescribes special education, transition planning, transition services, or related services through 21. That is a direct quote. So this means that a student must require services to be successful. The student has to be enrolled in one of 5 specific educational programs. So these are the accelerated college credit, the industry certificate, a college high school program diploma. That's the IB or the ACE option. The courses necessary for scholar designation or structured work study, internship, or pre-apprenticeship programs. So if it's expected that the majority of 18 to 22-year-old programs in the district will meet the definition of work study programs, there is no need for a deferral until the semester in which the student is expected to meet all of the requirements for that standard diploma. But you need to start talking about that possibly, I mean, again, 12 is the new age. So this is, I would honestly start talking to your children about what they think they can do and what life holds, at that point, at 12. And you don't want to talk, you don't want to wait until the 12th grade and then ask them what they want to do. It can be very overwhelming. It's a lot of pressure. It's better to talk to your kids and have this plan and know what you're doing. And that's why the state of Florida is being very proactive. The federal legislation is under IDEA for doing this transitional stuff is age 16. Florida was being progressive with doing it at 14. And of course, with this new change in the session, we've moved to 12, because the sooner we can start talking to kids about what's coming next, what they want, so all these self-advocacy, self-determinism skills, the better the quality of life that they will have once they're no longer in the school system and covered under IDEA. So here are some additional resources. Project 10 is an amazing one. Again, 10 is an acronym for Transition Education Network. They work hand in hand with the Florida Department of Education. Again, just like us, all of their services are free. They are grant funded. Online training opportunities you can find there, the graduation pathways chart. You can go to the secondary transition webpage at the Florida Department of Education. I have put that in the chat. And of course, the secondary transition roadmap for families, I have put that in the chat. Again, feel free to watch this more than once. It is a long presentation. It is all new information. A lot of this just came out in this last year of legislation. So take your time with it. don't feel like you need to access it all today. Take your time, absorb it, talk to your spouse, talk to your kids, talk to whatever, and then go back and check out the links at your leisure. We just provide them because we don't want to start telling you about something and then leave you hanging. So that's why we do it. There is no evaluation. But I would like to tell you a little bit more about our F&D family just for a minute. So the Family Network on Disabilities, as I said at the beginning of our presentation, we are the official parent training and information center for the state of Florida. Each state has one that is funded under IDEA and under the Federal Department of Education. F&D is Florida's. And we are divided into 3 sub-programs, and it's just by geographic location. I work with POPIN, Parents Offering Parents Information and Networking, and we cover the Panhandle from Escambia to Duval, and then a little bit downward to Brevard. We have the Parent Support Network, which covers the west side of the state, Parent Education Network on the east side of the state, and the Family Star. The Family Star is the statewide. They are not divided up in any way. It's the entire statewide health to health information center. So they are kind of our sister program, except where we are working with educational services and all transitions and all of that kind of stuff. They are focused on health issues, and they do intersect. So if you have a child that has profound healthcare needs and has IEPs, so there obviously is an intersection there as well. But we are all here to help, whether you need help with your child's health planning or IEPs, transitional planning. Maybe all of this is just French to you, and you need to start at the beginning. What is IDEA? How do I get a better IEP? What does this all mean? Please give us a call. We're here to help, and we're all parents. We know what it's like. We've all been you at one point, but we are here to help. Everything is free. We are that balance that IDEA allows for us to help parents to understand. So a couple of other services we have F&D trust services. Again, completely free to utilize this. There's multiple trust options. We can be the administrator. You can feel free to look that up on our website. It's www.fndusa.org. And then we also have the F&D online university, and this is a bunch of classes. It's not, there's no certifications, but it's everything ESE related in the state of Florida, and you can just learn that stuff at your own pace. It's online, it's just waiting for you. So if you are seeking more information, you can find us at www.fndusa.org. We have webinars on all kinds of topics. We have one-pagers on all of the big issues in ESE: transition, least restrictive environment, what constitutes a free and appropriate public education, what IDEA is, what written notice is, what your procedural safeguards are, what your rights are, whatever it is that you want to know. We have something that is designed for parents and to be understood easily. You can also find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and we also have a YouTube presence that also has a bunch of good resources. So thank you. I know this was a long presentation, and I'm sorry that for the parts that I had to read, but this is new. We're just learning this. We're figuring out, districts are right now figuring out how they're going to be implementing these new things. So we're kind of all new to this together. So if you can need any services, if you need any help, if you just looking for some support, just an ear even, we are here. Please give us a call or hit us up on www.fndusa.org. And thank you so much for your time. Have a great one. Bye.